you want to be healthier, yet you just don't know what to do? All these shows telling you this and that, but nothing seems to work. Well, listen close. Golden State Media Concepts has got something great for you. The Health and Wellness Podcast dedicated to workout trends, healthy eating habits, diet, and everything about healthy living. Join us in our banters as we help you not just live life to the fullest, but live it to the healthiest.
To the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Alex. Today we're going to talk about biofeedback as a tool for health and wellness. We'll discuss what it is, how it works, and the different types of use cases for it. So first up, what is biofeedback? Well, biofeedback is a mind-body technique that uses some different types of monitoring devices to help train you to control your physical processes consciously, rather than these processes remaining under just normal automatic control of your body. And you can affect several different processes in your body, including blood pressure, heart rate, your heart rate variability, breathing control, muscle tension, even your body temperature, sweating, reactions to stress, anxiety, and pain, and certain symptoms that are associated with ADHD. This concept isn't really new. Many Eastern philosophies are based on the mindset that meditating and visualizing can lead you to be able to control automatic physical processes. Although biofeedback started out as initially being considered an alternative or a complementary type of medicine, it's now used to help health problems like migraines, epilepsy, diabetes, high blood pressure, and even incontinence. So for a lot of folks, it's not entirely considered alternative medicine today, just depending on which doctors you ask. So biofeedback has been shown by different groups like the American Healthcare Policy Review Board to be effective, depending on precisely what you are trying to treat. A lot of folks refer to learning how to perform biofeedback as being training rather than a treatment though. So it really just depends on whom you're speaking with to really tell you how they view it and what precisely it is. But overall, it is considered to be a mind-body technique that was really brought to prominence in the US beginning in the 40s. So it does sound kind of like science fiction. It may make you think of things like the bioneural gel packs that they used to run the ship Voyager in Star Trek. However, it is legitimate and they have found that it works. So a lot of folks who have migraines have been able to train themselves how to lessen their headache's severity or reduce the amount of migraines they have. It's something that you can work on via body regulation, like your skin temperature, your heart rate, or your blood pressure. These are all things that are normally automatically controlled by your body, but you can work on training and developing skills to adjust these yourself. And by learning to control or make changes to these different functions in your body, you may be able to improve your medical condition, relieve chronic pain, reduce stress, or even improve your physical or cognitive performance. You may also hear people refer to this as peak performance training. So during biofeedback training, practitioners will attach sensors to your body, and these sensors are meant to detect changes in your pulse, your skin's temperature, muscle tone, brainwave patterns, and other types of physiological function. So they may be attaching different types of devices, including EMGs or electromyograms. Those measure muscle tension. Electro is, of course, electricity. Myo is going to be referring to your muscles, and then gram is that measurement. So it's measuring your muscle tension. Electrodermal activity, or EDA, that's used to measure changes in sweating, in your perspiration rate. You may also get finger pulse measurements to measure your blood pressure and your heartbeat, or EEGs, electroencephalogram. Encephalo being your brain, and electro, your electrical activity. So this is measuring electrical activity in your brain. In addition, they may also measure the rhythm and volume of your breathing. Once you have those body signals recorded, then a biofeedback technician or a computer may recommend physical and mental exercises to help you gain control. These biofeedback technicians are trained and typically nationally certified. There are different types of certifications that they can get, and although you don't have to have the certification in order to practice this, a lot of folks who are going to be practitioners voluntarily obtain these certifications to help put folks' minds at ease as well. Overall, I'm here for them getting these voluntary certifications. After all, I do like a medical practitioner who is willing to go the extra mile. Biofeedback has been shown to be most helpful in reducing stress and helping folks to relax, to reduce muscle tension. But it has also been found to be useful in treating different conditions like urinary incontinence, migraines, and other types of headaches, which we'll talk a little bit more about in a future segment. So by doing these biofeedback training exercises, you're getting these measurement outcomes from the different devices that are attached to your body. And these might trigger a signal or a sound or a flashing light or a change in pattern on a video screen to really represent to you that a physiological change has occurred. With the help of the computer or your biofeedback therapist, you can learn to alter that signal or that response that is indicating a physiological change has occurred by taking conscious control of your body's normally automatic body functions. It's very similar in practice to watching a heart monitor work, where you're hearing the different tones associated with the heartbeats, so those beeps that you hear, and you can also see it on the monitor itself in the form of those waves. So this is kind of how that works. You're just seeing a visual or hearing an auditory representation of different functions in your body, including digestion, which is more of a wild one to think about. Pulse, I think we're already used to seeing. We're used to seeing heartbeats represented on screen, whether that be in actual medical settings or on television, but digestion sounds kind of wild to consider. But you can then learn to control these beeps and squiggles after you understand what they represent. And typically, after a few sessions, you don't need to use the sensors or monitors anymore. Those are really just in place to help you understand how to impact those types of bodily functions. Once you know that, then your mind and biological system can really work together to influence changes on your body. We're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about preparation and follow-up for biofeedback training. Stay tuned. You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Are you looking to learn more about the latest trends from the fitness world? Are you confused by all of the different trends that are out there? The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place for you. The GSMC Fitness Podcast is the place to come for people of all skill and interest levels. Join us as we explore the latest trends in the fitness world. Does that new exercise really work? Should I try yoga? Whatever your question, chances are good you'll find an answer on the GSMC Fitness Podcast.
Discussing the topic of biofeedback, what it is, how your body is trained to do it, and how it's measured with different devices. Now we're going to talk about preparation for biofeedback. For anyone who is going to try biofeedback, it can be really helpful to prepare ahead of time. And don't worry, it's not anything super serious like preparing for surgery or anything like that. It's just good to know what you're getting into. So preparation for biofeedback can involve reading about biofeedback or listening to this podcast. So you're already halfway there. That way you have a general concept of the process you will be undergoing before you start. It can also help to be motivated to spend time and effort required to complete your own personal course of biofeedback. If your doctor refers you to a therapist to train yourself for this biofeedback, then the therapist will very likely contact your doctor in order to discuss your medical history and any current health problems before you begin biofeedback therapy. If your doctor has not referred you to a biofeedback therapist, but you want to try it, as usual, I'm going to recommend that you call your doctor first to discuss the situation. That will give you the opportunity to hear what your doctor really thinks about biofeedback as a treatment for the specific health issues that you face as an individual. Remember, health and wellness, just like most other things in life, are not really a one-size-fits-all. It also just helps keep your doctor in the loop regarding the types of treatments that you're using. It's honestly generally a good thing for all of your doctors to be in the loop and know that they're all on the same page about what all is going on. As we discussed in previous episodes related to vitamins and minerals, it's really important to let your doctor know all of the supplements that you're on. Even if you don't consider them to be medication, they could interact with your medication. And similarly, if you start getting really good results from your biofeedback treatment, and right around the same time, you may have also changed medications or started medications for a specific issue you're facing, your doctor might want to talk to you about that to make sure they can narrow down what specifically may be causing your improvement and how to perhaps taper you off of your medication if you would like to try to continue biofeedback therapy and dial down how much medication you're on. Remember, you should not be going on or off of other types of medication or supplements without speaking with your doctor first, as some types of supplements, herbal and otherwise, can actually impact the absorption of different medications in your body or even other vitamins in your body. So you want to have this full conversation so that you don't end up retaining too much of one vitamin or inactivating your birth control pills, etc., by disallowing for normal absorption of the medication or allowing for over-absorption of medication or supplements. Additionally, before you begin biofeedback therapy or any other type of complementary or alternative medicine, it's always good to check your therapist's credentials. The US FDA recommends that as well, so that you're aware of their credentials, their experience, and certification. I've seen a lot of folks go ahead and look into how many hours their yoga instructor has under their belt, but not so much regarding other types of CAM. So definitely go ahead and check that out too. That is just as important, if not more so, than how much training your yoga instructor has. You also want to check out the cost of treatment and whether your insurance will cover it. Some types of CAM are covered by insurance, and it never hurts to go ahead and ask. Just because one location or one practice doesn't accept it does not mean that all of those types of CAM are not accepting of your insurance. So check around, contact your insurance provider, and or call that office. Call a few local offices and see if they take your insurance. Also keep in mind that just because your doctor referred you to a place does not mean that they specifically take your insurance. Always call ahead and check. I have run into that myself in the past, and sometimes these referrals that you get are based on the doctors knowing each other and just being confident that they'll do good work. It doesn't necessarily mean that your specific insurance is taken by those facilities. Also, if you are on a type of insurance that's related to a medical system or anything like that, then you may have very specific situations under which you're required to obtain that referral. So some types of insurance are going to require you to get a referral for even just seeing a specialist, even if that is normally a medical specialist. So make sure you are checking that with your doctor. It can help reduce costs. You can also contact your doctor and request that they help you find a doctor who is a specialist in the area you're looking for, whether that be biofeedback therapy, other types of CAM, or even going to see a medical specialist to make sure that that person is within your network or are willing to participate in sliding scale fees and payments. Socioeconomic access to healthcare is a large problem within our country, as is information regarding alternatives. So even if you don't have insurance, you can speak with a doctor and see if they can help you find someone who has a sliding scale. Similarly, you can do that by going online and searching for sliding scale fees. Places like Planned Parenthood, in my experience, do have sliding scale fees, and they are able to help you if you need them. It's based on how much you earn is how these work. So it's kind of like certain student loan repayment programs where you're paying as you earn and so on. So there are a lot of times options out there for you. It's just that having a lack of socioeconomic access often tends to be correlated with a lack of information. And if you don't know that there is an option for you, then you're not really going to seek it out, right? So I just want you guys to know that there are medical interventions out there and CAM interventions out there offered by practices that do operate on sliding scale fees. You can also go to local places like your local dental school and be able to obtain a discounted rate or sliding scale fees, because these are students who are having to perform these procedures and they're overseen and assisted by doctors. So these doctors are making sure that they're learning these things appropriately, and they're also there to make sure that nothing really goes awry. But because they're students, it costs less money. Similar in concept to going to a community college and paying the students at the cosmetology program to cut your hair, or the aesthetics program to wax your eyebrows. It's cheaper because they're students and they're required to get in a certain number of hours in performing these procedures before they are able to obtain their licensure. So that goes for cosmetology, goes for aesthetics. It also often will go for auto body and auto mechanic programs at community colleges, as well as for practices that perform complementary and alternative medicine like biofeedback. We're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about the follow-up and risks of biofeedback. Stay tuned.
You really can't underestimate the importance of having the right creative work for your brand or your product. Whether it's a logo, a website, a book cover, or an ad campaign, you really need a quality design to make that big difference pop and deliver your overall engagement and success in a competitive market. That's where Design Crowd comes in. Design Crowd has over 750,000 designers from Sydney to San Francisco ready to help you with awesome creative ideas. They make crowdsourcing work for you. So if you need a logo or you're working on your creative branding, you can go to designcrowd.com and post a brief describing the design you need. And then within about 2 to 7 days, you'll receive up to over 100 different designs from designers around the world. Then you pick the best design and approve payment to the designer. So you're only paying for the design that you want. It takes a lot of the guesswork out of freelancing and out of crowdsourcing. And you don't have to be a huge company like Harvard Business School to use Design Crowd, although they have used it as well. You can start a project on Design Crowd for as little as $99. And if you go right now to designcrowd.com/health and wellness or enter the promo code health and wellness on their website, then our health and wellness listeners will receive up to $150 off of your design project. That's designcrowd.com/health and wellness or entering that promo code health and wellness.
Tired of searching the vast jungle of podcasts? Now listen close and hear this out. There's a podcast network that covers just about everything that you've been searching. Hey! The Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network is here. Nothing less than a podcast bliss with endless hours of podcast coverage. From news, sports, music, fashion, cooking, entertainment, fantasy, football, and so much more. So stop lurking around and go straight out to the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. Guaranteed to fill that podcast itch. Whatever it may be. Visit us at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and download us on iTunes, SoundCloud, and Google Play.
the break, we were discussing how to prepare for a biofeedback session, both cognitively and financially. In addition to how this works within the healthcare system, including the importance of getting a referral sometimes from your medical doctor in order for the insurance to go through appropriately, or sliding scale fees, and so on and so forth. Now we're going to discuss what happens during and after these appointments, as well as any risks. So once you are in the doctor's office and your biofeedback therapist is discussing your symptoms, your expectations, your medical history, current medications, and any other treatments you've tried before biofeedback, it may feel a lot like a doctor's visit, and that's because it is really holistic in that manner. We need to make sure that your biofeedback therapist is on the same page as your doctor, just as your doctor needs to be on the same page as your biofeedback therapist. They'll likely go ahead and discuss the results you hope to achieve and how that really measures against the results you can reasonably expect. Then they'll introduce you to that biofeedback equipment that we discussed in the first segment, including the EEGs, the EDAs, and so on. Once they get you connected to that equipment and the sensors start detecting your body's responses, they'll explain to you the different presentations of your bodily functions. So whether that is those auditory beeps or squiggles on the screen, etc., they'll let you know what each of those mean. When they place the sensors on your body, they will likely be attached to muscles on your head, your neck, and your jaw. If it's related to temperature biofeedback, they may place the sensors on your fingertips or your toes, especially if you are there for issues like Raynaud's disease. As you learn to control those body functions, the biofeedback equipment will signal you that you are seeing a change, either via a tone or a flashing light, or a change in those squiggles or patterns on a screen in front of you. Each person is different regarding the amount of sessions that they need. At the end of each session, though, the therapist will review your progress, let you know how well you're doing with controlling these different bodily functions intentionally, and then they'll outline a practice schedule for you to follow at home. You need to consistently practice this just like you would anything else related to health and wellness to help you remember the appropriate form and function of your training and also to reinforce it. Once you are finished with your biofeedback sessions, you can return to your therapist's office whenever you feel you need to. Just call them up and make another appointment as you are able to regarding your insurance and socioeconomic status. If you are under a doctor's care, make sure you're continuing to communicate all of these things to your doctor and still see your doctor. Remember, this is still an alternative medicine, and it's not something to replace entirely components of your treatment plan without discussing that with your doctor first. In regards to the risks of biofeedback, it's really generally a safe form of therapy. There are not any state laws that regulate the training of biofeedback therapists, but as I mentioned earlier, a lot of them will get that certificate from the Biofeedback Certification Institute of America, or BCIA, on a voluntary basis, just to allay your fears, prove that they have been educated in the practice, and that they are experienced professionals. If your doctor refers you to a biofeedback therapist, but you don't feel that the sessions are helping you relieve your pain, you can go ahead and call your doctor back and discuss the situation. Everyone is different, and there are different levels of effectiveness of biofeedback depending on the specific type of health problem it's trying to address. So your doctor might suggest an alternative form of treatment, or they may end up reconsidering your original diagnosis. The process of diagnosis is often a lot like troubleshooting, and it's okay if things do not end up working out the first time with the first type of treatment you and your doctor work on together, it may just help you also rule out other things. Remember, they first have to look for horses, and then afterwards, if you rule out the horses, they can begin looking for zebras. There are a few different types of biofeedback that may be recommended for you by your doctor or your biofeedback therapist, and the specific approach that you choose may depend on what exactly you're wanting to accomplish, what the actual outcomes may be, and what your therapist or physician recommends for your specific health issue. But some of the options you may choose from include things like breathing. So if you are someone who has practiced yoga or meditation before, this one will likely be very familiar to you. You do wear sensor bands around your chest and abdomen during this process, though, to monitor your breathing rates and patterns during respiratory biofeedback training. Over time, you can learn to have better control over your breathing rates, and that can help in a variety of situations, whether you are an athlete or you're looking to just de-stress and relax, or if you are someone who is typically very anxious. There are many different applications for even just the single type of biofeedback training. There's also a heart rate variability biofeedback, and there's some evidence that this could be useful for numerous disorders, including asthma and depression. Folks who use that type of biofeedback training wear a device connected to sensors either in your ears or on your fingers, or sensors are placed on your wrists, chest, or torso. Then those devices measure your heart rate as well as heart rate variability. You may also be checked for blood pressure. That type of biofeedback involves wearing a device that measures, you guessed it, your blood pressure. They are checking information about your blood pressure and also often will guide you through relaxation techniques. So you may be performing types of mindful meditation or guided meditations, working on visual cues, breathing exercises, or music. So these devices have gained a lot of popularity, but there has been a metadata study that reviewed 8 previous trials and didn't find convincing evidence that that specific type of biofeedback has any lasting long-term impact on hypertension. Earlier, we mentioned that your sweat response could actually be changed voluntarily via practicing biofeedback. Turns out it can. It's referred to as galvanic skin response, and that type of biofeedback measures how much sweat you have on the surface of your skin. Galvanic skin response is also called skin conductance, and it's a good marker for detecting levels of emotional arousal, because although we tend to associate sweat with exercise or fevers or just an overall external temperature being very high, like during the summertime, you can also sweat because of emotional stimulation. And the more strongly that you are experiencing these emotions, the stronger your skin conductance or your sweat response can really be. Anyone who is familiar with folks who start getting very sweaty when they are nervous may know what I'm talking about. All right, we're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about some more specific types of biofeedback training. Stay tuned.
The GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
including respiratory biofeedback, heart rate variability biofeedback, blood pressure biofeedback, and galvanic skin response, or skin conductance biofeedback. We're going to pick up where we left off with a few other specific types that you may be able to choose from or that may be recommended to you by your biofeedback therapist and or your doctor. First up, related to galvanic skin response, is skin temperature biofeedback. In this type, you would wear a sensor to detect the blood flow to the surface of your skin. A lot of folks often experience a decrease in body temperature when they're stressed, so these types of devices can help folks detect when they're starting to feel stressed out. A low reading on the monitors of a skin temperature sensor can tell you that you need to utilize some stress management techniques. Remember that your body can't really tell the difference between perceived stress that is a physical threat versus an emotional one. So the same areas in your brain light up whether the stressor is something that is physical or something that's just mentally or emotionally taxing. So in this way, your body is really going into a fight or flight type of response. It's going into a stress response. And part of that means that it's rerouting your blood flow to your core, and therefore away from your limbs, away from the surface of the skin. It's really putting it all into your axial skeleton, way deep down in there, to make sure you are able to perform the actions necessary for your stress response. That's why your body temperature tends to decrease when you are stressed out, and why we can use skin temperature biofeedback to detect when you're starting to feel stressed. Now, it may seem like you would automatically know when you're beginning to feel stressed, but remember that everyone is different and everyone experiences stress to different degrees based on our biology and psychology and social circumstances. So it is biopsychosocial. It's holistic in how we should really be approaching the concept of stress. It is intersectional. One person's 10 is going to be another person's 2, and vice versa. So some folks experience stress differently than each of us do, and those folks might need to go ahead and try to get ahead of the problem by recognizing their body temperature as a sign of rising stress, and that would allow them to perform stress management techniques early on. It's partly about recognizing the symptoms at onset, and partly about getting ahead of the curve on treatment. If you can prevent these issues to begin with, it's going to make it a lot easier down the line. So that is what skin temperature biofeedback is aiming for. You can also do brainwave biofeedback. It is most frequently referred to as neurofeedback, and it involves using those EEGs, the electroencephalography, to measure your brainwave activity. Remember electro, encephalo, and then graph. That is really just telling us it's measuring the electricity and your brain, so your brainwaves. So they put those sensors onto your head, onto your scalp, and connect them to an EEG machine. This type of biofeedback training is sometimes used for folks who have ADHD, a lot of recurrent pain, addiction, anxiety, depression, and a host of other disorders. It's really preferred in many cases because it's a non-invasive treatment, and it can be empowering for a lot of individuals who are living with these types of disorders. In addition to brainwave and skin temperature biofeedback, you can also undergo muscle tension biofeedback. So in this type, sensors are placed on the body in various points and then are connected to an electromyography device, an EMG. So remember, that is measuring your muscle tension by monitoring the electrical activity that occurs in muscle contractions. As we mentioned earlier, biofeedback training is particularly useful for stress and relaxation. However, it's not just stopping at stress. Chronic stress is a much larger problem that can really impact your blood pressure. It can lower your immunity. It can also result in depression or digestive problems or sleep issues. There is a whole host of different problems that can be associated with chronic stress, including a lot of these secondary issues. So when we're talking about addressing stress with biofeedback, we aren't just talking about stress. Someone who has a lot of chronic pain might be having that associated with chronic stress, or someone who has high blood pressure may be also chronically stressed, and their doctor may recommend that they lower their cholesterol by going on a specific diet and also learning different ways to manage their stress, whether that be dialectical behavior therapy or biofeedback therapy, or a combination of all of the above. They may even need to be on a certain type of blood pressure medication as well. Having a great doctor, though, who is into an integrative health approach can really help you find the best outcomes for you. And by learning how to manage your stress response using biofeedback, that makes you empowered to decrease the harmful physical and psychological effects that stress may have on your body, particularly if it is long-term. So how exactly does this work? Well, your body is going into that fight or flight stress response to deal with potential threats, but you can actually stop it. Many of these physical signs and symptoms of stress or anxiety include an increased heart rate, a body temperature fluctuation, or muscle tension, which are all things that biofeedback can address. So by learning how to control what are otherwise automatic physiological responses to stress, and learning how to stop them in their tracks and calm yourself back down and even reverse them, then folks who practice biofeedback training or participate in biofeedback therapy are able to learn how to relax their minds and their bodies to better cope with these expressions of stress and anxiety. When you're undergoing the treatment in the office, that generally lasts about 30 to 60 minutes. The duration of the treatment and the number of sessions required depends on a bunch of different factors, and oftentimes the typical course of treatment is somewhere between 4 and 6 sessions, but 8 to 10 is also not uncommon. After that, you can typically practice it on your own. So with training and practice, you can utilize biofeedback therapy to develop new skills related to coping or performance. And to make sure that it's effective, it requires that you play an active role in your treatment. So if you are anything like me, this may be something that is going to come across as being a great option for you. Y'all know from previous episodes that I am not in particular into meditation. I like to go out and do what's more of a walking meditation than the general concept that people think of when they think of meditation, in which you're sitting still and focusing on your breathing and so on. That's just never been my bag, although I do fully acknowledge that it definitely works for people. It definitely works for people in my personal life as well as empirically. It's just not something that I have enjoyed really when I have tried it in the past. And that's okay. We're all different. However, when I read about biofeedback, it really appeals to the scientist in me. So this concept that I can change my heart rate and my body temperature and other things like that in my body related to my stress response is truly very appealing. And it's really not that different from other types of breathing trainings or meditation. It's just how I am framing it in my mind and how I am thinking about it. It's really almost dialectical in nature. So that is how it works out for some folks, you guys. And if you're into mindfulness and meditation and different types of breathing practices or yoga, then dope. You may be already able to do these things. Or biofeedback may be a great type of training for you to improve these different yoga skills that you're working on. However, for other folks like me who have maybe tried meditation and just didn't find one that they like so far, biofeedback training might be right for you, and you should ask your doctor about it if you are interested. We're going to go on a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to discuss the different models of biofeedback training, as well as the efficacy of some biofeedback interventions as found by the Task Force of the Association for Applied Psychophysiology and Biofeedback and the Society for Neuronal Regulation. Stay tuned.
Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? The GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast is a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts America Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today. Download the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
As it relates to stress, muscle tension, brain waves, and skin temperature. Now we are going to discuss biofeedback in the types of models there are for biofeedback training. Thus far, we have mostly discussed biofeedback training in the types of settings to reduce pain or stress. However, you can also use it to improve academic, athletic, and corporate performance, in addition to using it for strictly health and wellness improvements. So these types of trainings may follow one of two models. Each of them provides feedback so that you can learn techniques to help correct anything that is malfunctioning. First up is operant conditioning and feedback learning. So this model helps you utilize consequences as a means to modify the occurrence or type of behavior. That's operant conditioning in a nutshell, and if you have taken a psychology class, you likely remember this. In the specific context of biofeedback, a straight operant conditioning model means that you will solely be reinforcing the signal displays to prompt you to change your physiology. So this feedback learning is something that's often paired with operant reinforcement. For example, if you are trying to learn to putt a golf ball and you see where the ball goes, and that helps you learn how to adjust your next stroke to get a better control over where the ball is going. In biofeedback, you are seeing this physiological data or hearing it be presented, whether it is in the form of those flashes or those auditory signals like beeps or in squiggles on a screen or a pattern that changes. You're seeing these to help you go in a better direction and improve your feedback learning. The positive reinforcement learning component is also pretty satisfying. And in the case of your biofeedback, it is seeing that physiological data go in a better direction. So think about perhaps using the Wii. If you guys have ever used the Wii Fit or the Wii Fit board, you may be familiar with some of the concepts I'm talking about. So when you get onto the Wii Fit board and you're going to do a little bit of a workout, a lot of the offerings available on this game are related to your balance and your posture. And those are some of my favorite components of the game. It will tell you how you are carrying your weight, whether you are standing a little bit to the back and offset to the left or right, or offset forward when you are standing still and you're perceiving yourself as standing up straight. And that can help you be mindful of perhaps weakened muscles in your body, or if you're carrying a big heavy bag or purse a lot of the time, you may have begun listing in that direction, or you may have been keeping your wallet in one of your back pockets while sitting down and thereby have shifted the way that your hips naturally sit, because essentially there is a wedge under one of them. To help you deal with this though, the Wii Fit first will measure you for that when you first come into the Wii Fit program each day. And then it will offer you some games to play. And you don't have to pick any specific games, but the balance ones are some of my favorites. And for those, it's to help work on my posture and just my overall stance, making sure that I am balanced directly over my center of gravity and I'm not standing in a funny manner, which I have previously done as I spent a lot of my youth carrying heavy backpacks and I did not carry them on both shoulders like I should have. So, in this way, I want you to think about your biofeedback and the Wii Balance Board. There are games on it that require you to lean more to one side than the other, and the sensors within the Wii Balance Board will record how far you're listing to each side as you try to keep a little red dot for your center of gravity in the lines or the boundaries of some objects on the screen. The better you do, the more positive reinforcement you get from that learning. And you're really just watching the feedback on the screen in the form of your physiological data go in a better direction. That is largely analogous to how this works for biofeedback operant conditioning as well. And in this process, your therapist is really mostly there to explain the equipment, what it's measuring, how it relates to your body. The operant conditioning and feedback learning model have been used to manage many different medical disorders, including Raynaud's disease and fecal incontinence. The second type of biofeedback training model is psychophysiological psychotherapy. People who are living with different types of diseases that are associated with major stress components might also be helped by biofeedback using the specific psychophysiological psychotherapy model of learning. And in that model, it's important to really understand the patient as an individual. It's very much a patient-centered model. Stress management and other types of psychotherapeutic interventions may be used in combination with biofeedback training to help make folks undergoing this be more aware of how stress is holistically impacting their bodies, as stress can have a physiological component. So this model of learning in biofeedback training really helps give you a psychophysiological assessment. So part mind, part body, and it gives you a psychological evaluation as well to help you determine thought and behavior patterns that may be contributing to your physiological issues you're experiencing. That particular application of biofeedback training often includes stress management, and it may be the most successful in treating stress-related disorders. Now, in that regard, that reminds me of dialectical behavior therapy, where you're focusing on how your thoughts and beliefs really shape how you see the world, and how reframing your worldview can also really help decrease your stress anxiety, depression, and a whole host of other types of issues, even if it was originally created for borderline personality disorder. So dialectical behavior therapy as a form of cognitive behavioral therapy that is kind of under the umbrella of psychotherapy in general may be very beneficial for folks who are also performing biofeedback practices like psychophysiological psychotherapy in order to manage their stress responses or their anxiety. In this way, it is a very holistic practice, and I also like the concept of being able to be a partner in your own treatment plan. Although biofeedback therapy is referred to as a process of training and not really referred to as a treatment. And the reason they term it that way is that a lot of these therapists consider treatments to be something passive. It's something that the patient really receives or something that is done to/for the patient. But in the case of the training, it really reframes this as the patient being an active learner. And a lot of emphasis in this clinical biofeedback therapy is placed on education, which is largely a lot of the appeal for me. So because this is an alternative or complementary type of therapy, that means that you can still be taking your Prozac, you guys, and be working with a psychotherapist to reframe how you view the world, and also work on lessening your reactions to stress in the moment. And if it's done that way, then you have a true biopsychosocial type of model for integrating your healthcare plan with your doctor. As a general reminder, I am not a doctor. I am not saying that you should go on Prozac and then go on biofeedback therapy and also go to psychotherapy. I am not qualified to prescribe a treatment plan. Rather, I am presenting this concept that you can do this in combination with a host of different treatments that you're undergoing with your doctor. Because remember, this is a training and it's non-invasive. It's not necessarily a treatment. We're going to go on another break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about the task force of the Association for Applied Psychophysiology and Biofeedback and the Society for Neuronal Regulation's efficacy measures for biofeedback interventions. Stay tuned.
GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast gives you advice on everything from hair to fashion to skincare products. We'll talk about the latest trends in makeup, hairstyles, and anti-aging remedies. And we'll cover all of the newest fashion trends. If you have an interest in or questions about the beauty trends that might work best for you, the Golden State Media Concepts Beauty Tips Podcast has got you covered. Download the GSMC Beauty Tips Podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Including operant conditioning and feedback learning, and psychophysiological psychotherapy, and how these different models can be combined with other types of medical interventions, including medications or even psychotherapy, to help you have a fully integrative approach to resolving many different types of disorders or health issues you may be experiencing. Now we're going to talk about the efficacy of these biofeedback interventions. Are they effective in doing what we are wanting them to do? So in 2001, a task force went through and checked to see what levels of evidence-based clinical efficacy there were for these psychophysiological interventions. And they made 5 levels in order to categorize these different interventions. These levels are on a scale of 1 to 5 accordingly, and level 1 is not empirically supported, so it means that there hasn't been scientific research to support that this works for this particular issue. There's only been anecdotal reports or case studies that aren't peer-reviewed. For level 2, it's saying that it's possibly efficacious and that there's at least one study that has sufficient statistical merit and analysis and has well-identified outcome measures, but which ultimately lacks random assignment to a control condition that is within that current study. Level 3 means it's probably efficacious. Not just possible, but it's likely so. So for level 3, the evidence means you need to have your study supported by multiple observational, clinical, waitlist controlled, within subject and intra-subject, between and among folks who were in the study, and that it was able to be replicated and demonstrate that it is effective in producing the outcome that it is claiming to produce. For level 4, efficacious. That means it has to meet all of the following 6 criteria. So it means if they've compared it with a no treatment control group, alternative treatment group, or a placebo group utilizing random assignment, and the investigative treatment is shown to be statistically significant in its superiority to the control conditions, or the investigational treatment, in this case, biofeedback therapy, would be equivalent to a treatment of established efficacy in a study that has sufficient power to detect moderate differences. And, so this is not an either or, all 5 of these have to be true. B, that was just A, you guys. So B, for the criteria of level 4 efficacy, means that the studies have been conducted with a population that are treated for the specific problem. So if the study was on biofeedback in folks who are presenting with anxiety, that everyone in the group is being treated for anxiety, and inclusion criteria are defined in a reliable, operationally defined manner. So only folks who are experiencing the exact type of anxiety and are undergoing treatment for it may be included. You have very strict rules about who can be in this study and who cannot be. C, the study used valid and clearly specified outcome measures related to the problem being treated. So they determined this is specifically what is going to constitute a success. This is what would constitute a failure regarding specifically the use of biofeedback training in folks who are diagnosed with clinical anxiety. And D, the data are subject to appropriate data analysis. And E, the diagnostic and treatment variables and procedures are clearly defined in a way that permits the study to be replicated by independent researchers. Replicability is very important in science. It makes sure that other folks can get the same results as you on different populations or different samples of individuals who are having the same types of issues and you're using the same type of training, but they are unassociated with the original study, and no one in the new study who is conducting the study was involved in the original study either. And that just helps keep everyone honest. We put a lot of measures into keeping scientists honest within the scientific community, and we take integrity and ethics very seriously. Scientists also very much love clear definitions. That way we are also all on the same page. The last criterion, F, is the superiority or equivalence of the investigational treatment, biofeedback therapy in this case, has been shown in at least 2 independent research settings. So 2 totally different research labs, different individuals involved, different funding sources, etc., just to make sure that there are no conflicts of interest. So that is a lot of criteria to be considered and necessary for level 4 efficacious, as it should be. Level 5 is efficacious and specific. And to meet the criteria for level 5, you have to meet all of the level 4 criteria, and the investigational treatment has to have been shown to be statistically superior to credible placebo therapies, pills, or alternative legitimate treatments in at least 2 independent research settings. Now that we know the criteria for this Likert scale of 1 to 5, with level 1 being not empirically supported and level 5 being definitely efficacious and specific to this context, we can discuss this study in 2008 by Yucha and Montgomery, who used this scale to rate current evidence of the efficacy of biofeedback training on various diseases. And if they have a lower efficacy rating, that doesn't mean that biofeedback is not helpful in that condition, but that at the time, relevant research had not yet been conducted. So it's really, remember, level 1 is a dearth of research. It has not been studied or reviewed in a peer-reviewed manner, meaning scientists are reading other scientists' work and saying, yeah, that actually makes a lot of sense and I concur with you. And that there were perhaps also just anecdotal reports, so just people blogging about it and things like that. But they want real scientific studies with controls and everything too. So that just means studies haven't necessarily been performed yet. It does not entirely rule it out. However, I wanted to go over a couple of the levels with you guys as they relate to different issues. So for medical conditions, the level 5 has been found to be applicable to urinary incontinence, specifically in females, so that is efficacious and specific. For level 4 efficacious, it has been found to be applicable for anxiety, ADHD, chronic pain, constipation in adults, epilepsy, headaches in adults, and hypertension, as well as motion sickness, Raynaud's disease, and temporomandibular disorder. For level 3, probably efficacious, they found alcoholism/substance abuse, arthritis, diabetes mellitus, fecal incontinence, headaches in children, insomnia, traumatic brain injuries, urinary incontinence in males, and vulvar vestibulitis to be on the applicability list. For level 2, possibly efficacious were asthma, autism, Bell's and cerebral palsies, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, coronary artery disease, cystic fibrosis, depressive disorders, erectile dysfunction, fibromyalgia/chronic fatigue syndrome, hand dystonia, IBS, PTSD, repetitive strain injury, respiratory failure with mechanical ventilation, strokes, tinnitus, and urinary incontinence in children. For level 1, which is the anecdotal evidence but no scientific research at that time, was eating disorders, immune function, spinal cord injury, and syncope, which is a temporary loss of consciousness caused by a fall in your blood pressure. The specific article I referenced in this today is called Biofeedback in Medicine, Who, When, Why, and How by Frank et al. In 2010 within the journal Mental Health and Family Medicine. There have very likely been some more recent studies in the past 10 years, but I really like the way that this was outlined and was pretty straightforward for lay people as well. They did a great job in explaining their definitions and the background for those definitions, as in the case of operant conditioning and operant conditioning within the realm of biofeedback specifically. So this is a really great article if you guys are interested in reviewing the table for the biofeedback training that's been proven to be efficacious. They do have a full table of that online on the article. So you can read this full article online for free. I read it on NCBI and I really enjoyed it. Keep in mind that the lower levels don't necessarily mean it's not effective, but rather that it has not been shown to be effective yet at the time of the writing of this article. So there very well may be some things on the lower levels, level 3 and below, that are efficacious but didn't meet the criteria at the time, but have in the past 10 years. So if you go and check out the list yourself, or if you have questions about something that wasn't on the list, then you may also want to Google that efficacy rating for the specific disorder in which you are interested. You could also ask your doctor about the efficacy rating of the specific biofeedback training that they may recommend. The most heartening part of this article, I believe, though, is seeing that there is empirical evidence that biofeedback training really works, not just for wellness and relaxation, but also for helping with medical conditions that you might not really consider, like urinary incontinence or chronic pain or even epilepsy and headaches. I do experience migraines in my personal life, and this would perhaps be a very large help for me and for other folks who also experience these excruciating headaches. It never would have occurred to me that it could help in the therapy for epilepsy, but that is why we have these articles out here, and that is the beauty of specialization of trade. We have all of these folks out in the world who are experts in the individual things that they love, that set their soul on fire, and that bring passion and intellectual discovery into their lives and into the world in general. If it were just up to me, I would never have discovered that on my own. But it turns out that biofeedback training has a very broad spectrum of illnesses, disorders, and diseases that it can treat. So if you feel like you would like to try this out to address your specific ailments, go ahead and talk to your doctor about it. Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Health and Wellness Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that you please subscribe to the show, and writing a nice review always really helps us. Also, if you could please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, I'd appreciate it. Thank you kindly, and have a good night.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Health and Wellness Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network, from movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.